We'll begin our practice with Sun Salute. Standing
Hi,
in Tadasana.
I'm Dr. Timothy McCall. I'm the medical editor of Yoga Journal. I'll be talking briefly about some of the health benefits of these poses, some contraindications or reasons why you may not want to do the poses, and try to give you a few tips for doing them a little bit more safely.
Shoulder blades releasing towards
We
you.
often begin yoga practice with sun salutations to warm the body up, loosen the joints and muscles.
Bring your palms together in front of your heart.
Sun salutations build both strength and flexibility.
With your next inhale, bring your arms out to the side and up.
If you're flexible, but not so strong, you'll notice that with regular practice, you'll steadily gain strength. For those who are less flexible, if you're patient and you practice steadily, over time you will gain flexibility.
As you exhale, step to plank position. We'll take a couple of breaths here.
Never force flexibility though. That can lead to injury.
Lift your thighs and belly. Lift your sternum.
Remember, anytime during your yoga practice, pain is an indication that you're doing something wrong. Yoga is about listening to the messages your body is giving you and respecting them.
Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog.
If you're persisting in spite of pain, you really aren't doing yoga.
And then press the floor away, moving your shoulders and hips back and up, extending your heels back and down. Take a last inhale here,
In yoga, all your breathing is through the
and
nose.
then at the end of your exhale, step your
That warms the air, humidifies it, and filters it, and makes it easier on your lungs.
exhale, fold it in.
Notice how every movement in the sun salutation is coordinated with the breath. Inhale as you come up,
And then exhale, palms together in front of your heart. Let's take a couple more rounds of Sun Salute, this time at speed. Inhale, sweep it open. Exhale, fold.
see if you can continually bring your attention to the breath through the practice.
Exhale, step to plank.
It's a way to calm yourself and also a way to monitor how you're doing.
Inhale, press with.
If your breath becomes strained, it may mean that you're trying too hard.
Exhale, downward facing dog.
And that is the antithesis of yoga.
Lengthen your spine and waist. Create more distance between your palms and your hips.
Downward facing dog is a wonderful pose to lengthen the spine. And lengthening the spine is actually one of the key aims of our asana
The
practice.
heels more deeply into the floor. Final inhale. And then at the end of your exhale, step your feet to your hands. Inhale, offer your heart forward. Make sure the shoulder blades draw back.
She bends from the hips. She doesn't bend at the waist. If you bend at the waist, you can end up compressing your spine and hurting your back.
We'll take this one more time. Inhale, opens you up. Exhale, folds you
You
up.
notice the way Jason modifies his sun salute. When he bends forward, he keeps his knees a little bent because his hamstrings are tight.
Keeping your elbows shoulder distance apart. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog.
When you first do dog pose, you may notice a lot of weight in your hands. The more you can use the muscles of your legs to push your thighs backward and to ground more strongly into the floor, the more your spine will lengthen and the more it'll help take the load off your hands.
From here, we'll move into our lunging twist.
Twists are an example of a counter pose. Now there's a tendency in twists to lead with the head. You don't want to do that and let this twist come from the abdomen and chest and only a little bit with the head as an afterthought toward the end of the pose.
Press down to lift up, spreading across the collarbones and releasing the shoulder blades down the back.
Arm balances are challenging poses. They require strength and some confidence, and they often can be poses that are challenging for people and which bring up in a lot of people fear.
Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog.
One of the wonderful things that can happen from engaging an arm balance practice regularly, however, is that you learn that things which were once impossible become possible.
Keep that feeling of strength. Take your left hand to the ceiling.
And becomes a lesson that many people can generalize to other aspects of their life, that they can do things they didn't think they'd be capable of. The other great benefit of the arm balances, as the name implies, is that it improves your sense of balance. And balance is really integral to yoga.
Inhale, upward facing dog.
Balancing the body from left to right, forward to back. Balancing effort and letting go. Again and again, we'll return to this topic of balance.
With your next inhale, rock the shoulders forward so they stack over the wrists. Press the floor away so the shoulders and chest lift. Draw the belly in and up so it supports the lower back.
Plank pose, we really use the legs and abdomen to help take the pressure off the hands. And indeed, plank pose is a wonderful abdominal strengthener.
Roll to the outer edge of your left foot, keeping your left shoulder stacked over your left wrist and taking the right hand to the ceiling. Recreate the actions of plank. Thighs and belly firm, tailbone to heel, so there's integrity at the center.
Vashisthasana helps build strength in the arms and is also a balancing pose. The more you can keep your shoulders lined up over your hand, the easier you'll find the balance to be.
Take an inhale in plank. With your exhale, move directly to downward facing dog. Take a couple of breaths here, smoothing out your breath if it became hurried or uneven in any way. Other side. With your inhale, come to plank. Belly up, tailbone down, heart forward, heels back, so you are long and strong through your core. Maintaining these intentions, roll to the outer edge of your right foot.
Now you'll notice the way Jason modifies Vashisthasana, bending his leg. This is a good modification if you don't have the strength or balance to do this pose well. You'll notice the upward movement in Jason's Vashisthasana, how his chest is expanding and moving upward, not collapsing down into the arm, but really lifting up.
Inhale here. Exhale, downward facing dog. Take a couple of breaths here, using these breaths to focus and quiet the mind after the challenge of the arm balance. Steady the breath so that it can support you as we move into our next pose, Bakasana. Remember that the actions in Bakasana are very similar to the actions of Chaturanga. So we'll take Chaturanga first to create a model for Bakasana. With your next inhale, rock forward to plank. Keeping the belly up and the tailbone down, extend your heart forward and draw your elbows in as you exhale to Chaturanga.
Bakasana is a pose that many people fear. They worry they don't have the strength or they're afraid they're going to fall over. But it's a wonderful pose to practice to help cultivate the qualities of strength and balance.
Step your feet not quite all the way to your hands. With hands shoulder distance apart, come high on your toes, placing your knees as high as they'll go on the backs of the arms.
Putting a blanket on the floor in front of you can make you feel more secure and can cushion you if you fall, if you lose your balance.
Find a steady gazing point to help with balance, either between or just in front of your hands.
If you don't feel stable in Bakasana, it's best to come down and step back into Chaturanga Dandasana rather than to jump back, as Natasha demonstrated. You really don't need that much strength to stay up in the pose. But many people don't realize that it's really often more about balance than strength. You can always add the jump later on.
Take a last inhale. End of your exhale, step your feet to your hands.
Okay, we're about to do a number of inversions. Inversions, when we go upside down, can be deeply calming to the nervous system. Medical studies have shown that inversions affect the levels of several hormones, which over the long run tend to lower blood pressure.
Bring your mat and whatever props you may need to the wall. Begin sitting against the wall with your legs extended.
But when we do an inversion, our blood pressure while we're doing it actually goes up. And therefore inversions can be dangerous for some people with blood pressure problems, problems in the eyes, etc. If your blood pressure is poorly controlled, you really shouldn't be going upside down. Now, if you're on blood pressure medications and your blood pressure is well maintained, it's generally okay to do inversions, but please check with your doctor. If you have eye problems, like glaucoma, problems with the retina, or even if you're just very nearsighted, it's a good idea to consult with an eye doctor before attempting upside down poses. Similarly, if you have diabetes, you want to see an eye doctor before going upside down to be sure it won't be risky for you. Going upside down changes the gravitational forces on our spine. Normally, all day long, our spine is getting compressed, but when we go upside down, we can lengthen the spine and turn the forces of gravity around.
Then gently roll your way up, uncurling as you go, neck and head the last to come up.
If you feel at all lightheaded when coming up from any kind of forward bend or inversion, simply come up more slowly. Honor what your body's telling you. If you're getting dizzy when you come up, that means you need to slow it down, even if you need to pause the tape.
Gaze between your hands and step 1 foot in. With your next inhale, keeping the shoulders over the wrists.
Now both handstand prep and handstand put a lot of pressure on the wrists. If your wrists ache during or immediately after coming out of the pose, that's a bad sign. One way to relieve the pressure on your wrists in the pose is to put a little more weight into the knuckle side of your palms, in other words, toward the fingers, as most of us tend to put the weight in the heel of our palms, and that can compress the carpal tunnel and cause problems with achiness or even numbness and tingling in some people. If you've got carpal tunnel syndrome, it's probably a good idea to skip poses like these, where you're bearing your body weight on your hands with your wrists cocked at a 90-degree angle.
Rock your shoulders forward over your wrists. Keep the shoulders stacked.
You'll notice that in handstand that Jason is doing a modification. What he's doing is he's using a strap just above his elbows to help keep the arms from buckling out to the side. This allows you to use the strength of your arms to open up the shoulders more and to get better elevation into the handstand. The bolster between his head and the wall is simply to provide him a sense of security, that he's not going to smack his head against the wall. It's a nice soft place for him to rest his head.
Take a long inhale to lengthen the spine and waist. As you exhale, release your knees to the floor and then sit back on your heels, preparing for headstand.
Headstand is a wonderful pose which yogis believe cultivates what they call the yogic mind. A state of equanimity allows you to not sweat the small stuff.
Place your head in the nest of your hands, making sure that the wrists remain stable.
But headstand is not for everyone.
Press the floor away from wrist to elbow so that the shoulder blades draw up.
It's best to skip this pose if you have any neck pain, nerve problems in the arms, or arthritis in the neck.
Bring your heels towards your hips. Take your feet and your buttocks to the wall.
You'll notice that Jason is simply staying with preparatory poses for headstand. Once he builds up the strength and sufficient openness in the shoulders and chest to do a headstand well, he may begin doing that pose sometime down the road. It's incredibly important in headstand to lift out of the shoulders and the neck and to use the legs to get good elevation and length throughout the spine. It's also important not to push too hard. If headstand is difficult for you, at first you may only want to stay up for a few seconds and build the time up gradually.
Using your arm and belly strength together, start to curl your way down, knees moving towards your ribs and then all the way to the floor. Move directly into child's pose and take several breaths here. Always come directly into child's pose after headstand so that the neck can release. In child's pose, listen to the sound of your breath against the back of your throat. Let the outer body release as you cultivate your inner body through your attention to your breath.
Be sure to come up from inversions like headstand slowly.
With your next inhale, begin to slowly roll your way up. Neck and head the last to come up until you're sitting back on your heels. We'll use plow and shoulder stand as counter poses to headstand.
You'll notice that Natasha referred to shoulder stand as being a counter pose to the headstand. You'll notice that the neck is in one direction in the headstand, a little straighter and slightly arched, whereas it tends to flatten a little bit more in the plow pose and shoulder stand, thus the counter pose. Now, plow and shoulder stand can put a strain on the neck, and you need to be very cautious if you've had any neck problems. I strongly advise that most people use blankets under their shoulders, as Natasha is doing. The shoulders should be on the blankets and an inch or two from the edge, the back of the head on the floor, and the neck free. None of the vertebrae should be pressing into the floor.
Shift the soles of your feet forward slightly so that your ankles stack over your hips and your hips stack over your shoulders. Once you've established your alignment, find a steady gazing point.
The blankets allow you to do these poses while maintaining the gentle, healthy inward curve of the cervical spine, of the neck. The neck should not be flat and pushing into the ground. It should be gently arching up. If you do flatten the curve, your risk of injury, for example, straining the ligaments, is greatly increased.
Take one more inhale, and then exhale, release your feet to the floor and plow.
There should be no discomfort in the neck at all in either plow pose or shoulder stand. If your neck starts to feel uncomfortable at any point, it's best to slowly come out of the pose.
Use your arm and belly strength to slowly roll your way out. When you feel your mid-back touching your blankets, bend your knees, then continue to roll the rest of the way out until your feet touch the floor. Carefully roll to one side so that you can move the blankets out of the way, and then return to your back, hugging your knees into your chest. Keep your right knee drawn into your chest. Extend your left leg out along the floor. Take your right knee to the floor on your left, coming onto the side of your left hip.
A gentle twist can serve as a counter pose after all the work we've done with our spine today.
And then turn and look past your right fingertips, releasing your right shoulder towards the floor. Breathe into the length of the twist.
You may also find that this supine twist is very calming.
With your next inhale, come back to center. Shift your hips back to the middle of your mat, and then draw your knees into your chest. Keep your left knee drawn in, right leg out in front of you.
You'll notice that when Natasha shifts her hips,
Move your hips to the left.
how she gets better alignment of her spine and isn't arching too much.
And then drop away from this anchor with your left shoulder.
In these final poses we're doing before relaxing, don't worry about going as deeply into the pose. Use them to decompress and to calm down.
Shift your hips, and then draw your knees deeply into your chest and close your eyes.
One way you can assess whether you're doing the inversions properly is how you feel when you're done. Ideally, the inversions should be very relaxing, and you should be calm and ready for a deep relaxation pose when you're done.
Separate your feet about as wide as your mat, and then from hip bone to ankle, let the legs roll open. Turn your palms towards the ceiling and roll your outer shoulders under, opening across your chest. Shavasana, our final resting pose, is sometimes called the pose of surrender.
As you move into Shavasana, allow your body to sink into the floor.
Letting the body release completely into the floor beneath you.
Let everything go. Let your breath breathe you.
To fully absorb the benefits of the inversion and balancing practice.
Your job is to simply observe what's going on.
Allow the inner body to follow. Let the breath soften. Let the mind quiet. Rest deeply.
All your physical work is done. Try to completely let go of any muscular holding. Scan your body and notice if there's any tension anywhere. With an exhalation, let that tension go and feel the body sink more deeply into the ground.
Gradually start to deepen your breath. Bring small movements into your fingers and toes, and then keeping your eyes closed, roll to your right side, curling your knees in towards your chest. Pause here.
Throughout the practice today, we've tried to cultivate relaxed awareness.
Letting your head be the last part of you to come up.
As you sit up and move into a cross-legged posture to end the practice, try to stay in this observing mode.
Sitting with your legs crossed, bring your palms together in front of your heart.
Notice how your body feels. Tune into your breath.
Press into the floor with both sitting bones evenly, and then lift up out of that. Crown of the head extending to the ceiling, shoulder blades releasing down the back. Take a final inhale here, and then as you exhale, lower your chin, dropping your head into the lift of your heart. Breathe in all aspects of your practice: the focus, the energy, the concentration of your arm balances and your inversions.
The more yogic awareness you can bring to the rest of your day, the better the rest of your day will be.
These qualities which we experience so vividly on our yoga mat are available to us at all times. Breathe them in deeply. Namaste.
Namaste.